Okay, hey everybody, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. And I have a cool review for you guys from the brand Seiko. A little about them. They were founded back in 1881. They are Japanese in origin, now factories throughout Asia. They cover all market segments from entry level to high end. And in terms of type of watch, this is a chronograph. Some key characteristics and design, which you're looking for a chrono. Of course, you're going to find external pushers to activate timing functions with multiple sub-dials to measure elapsed time, often featuring additional scales dependent on the subgenre. Now, in terms of this particular model, this is their Prospex Speedtimer SRQ055, and it is a modern reinterpretation of Seiko's Speedtimer chronograph ranges from the 1970s. These go for $2,500 at full retail, but they are available, of course, from dealers, and one of the dealers that are out there are thewatchconnection.com, located in Costa Mesa, California. So a big shout out to Noah from their team for getting me the best pricing available. And remember, for Seikos, typically you're not going to be paying that full retail unless there's a high demand and these are selling out, which you never know. For stuff like this, sometimes that can be the case, but typically you can kind of bargain and try to get a couple of $100s off here and there. Now, this is a piece that I'm very intrigued by, yes, because it's not just honoring the Speedtimer line, it actually has the Speedtimer text across the dial, which is something that is very cool and quite different for Seiko, right? We've seen them do that earlier this year with the Speedmaster line, bringing back that namesake, as well as now the Speedtimer, and even the Alpinist is, they have Alpinist across the dial, and I think that's really, really cool and something different, because for the longest time, a lot of their watches had these customer given nicknames, which are cool. Don't get me wrong. I love a good Seiko Turtle, Sumo, Samurai, etc. But there's something about these having their actual heritage naming conventions. I think it's very cool and something different, right? It's the same way that you could have the trilogy of Omega in their release, right? Like I recently did a video about my Neo Vintage Omega trilogy, comprised of a Railmaster, a Seamaster, and a Speedmaster. And I now have a similar trilogy from Seiko that they quietly released in the form of an Alpinist, a Marine Master, and a Speedtimer that you can all buy modern today. So I think that's really, really cool. So with all that said, let's go ahead and zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, whew. Now, of course, beautiful look here, very dynamic, very function forward, but I think still quite clean and very versatile, especially in this monochromatic format with just white font over black background. And it's a looker. Now, in terms of the dimensions here, guys, 41.5 diameter is what I get on my calipers, 15 millimeters thick, 49.5 millimeters lug to lug, stainless steel, brushed and polished with that Dia Shield super hard coating. Now, in terms of the crystal, it's a dual curve, so even at harsh angles, it's going to remain quite legible, and it does also have an anti-reflective coating. Also, you're going to see that nice brushed tachymeter bezel insert, which is really handsomely done and well aligned in this example. Now, the crown is push-pull and unsigned, but it is oversized, which is quite nice and makes it usable, and again, very function forward, great tactile engagement. I also do like those pump style pushers there, which are nicely pronounced and elevated away from the case contouring. Now, getting into the movement here, guys, you're going to have the Seiko 8R48, which has a 45-hour power reserve, as well as beating at 4 hertz or 28,800 vibrations per hour in terms of that beat rate. And this thing is a beauty. So you're going to have column wheel and vertical clutch systems. So with that column wheel means you're not going to get any types of stagger on the actuation here. It's just beautifully done. And then in terms of that vertical clutch, means you can actually run this tachymeter seconds as well as along with your small seconds there on the sub dial, and it's not going to add any additional wear or tear. So very nice. I actually had this running extremely long from earlier today, and it ran like a beauty, and I forgot about it, and it still just kept ticking, and beautifully so. So nice and confidence inspiring. This is not my first 8R48 powered watch, and it probably won't be my last. It's a very solid, robust movement, if not a bit thick. Of course, being an automatic mechanical chronograph, that is part of just kind of the nature of the beast. But in this case, this movement is a modular movement, so it's essentially like a 6R movement with a modular or a module put on top for the additional chronograph feature set. I don't hear enough people talking about that. I understand, I give this watch credit in terms of all the in-house niceties, but that is one of the subjective drawbacks to it, is that this is not a fully integrated chronograph. This is a modular chronograph. So still works for me, still works beautifully, beautifully smooth, alignment wise, also really great. Winding action, also the fact that you're going to still get that smooth 4 Hz sweep, also very nice. And a 45-hour power reserve, while not the best, that is pretty close to 2 days, which isn't bad. Now, getting into the dial here, guys, applied indices, as you guys can see, matte black dial with the date at the 4.5 o'clock. And then you have those sunken chronograph subdials, dual finished hands. You're getting Seiko Lume 10 bar or 100 meters of water resistance, which is great. Getting into some other details, you're going to have these semi-boxed lugs here that are going to have a 20 millimeter lug width, which is fantastic and will make this quite versatile on various straps. And then you're going to get solid female end links and solid links all the way around. And these are going to taper from about 20 millimeters down to about 17.8 on this multi-link bracelet, which is a very, very well articulated. Now, you're going to have, of course, those high polished intermediate accents, and you're also going to get half links. You can see one of the half links I have here, and it's not going to be as articulated as the standard size link, but you can see there'll normally be two, one on this side, one on that side. In this case, I did forego the half link to get my size nice and dialed in. So very, very nice. Beautiful setup here, pin and collar construction. So even though it's going to be a little bit more hassle to set, it's going to be something that you can kind of leave alone after you set it. You can set it and forget it. Nicely milled and contoured here. As you guys can see, when we look on the underside, this is what's going to be up against your wrist. I like that they went and they beveled and broke the edges there. If I can get the camera to focus, there we go. You can see there, very, very nice. And that's going to feel nice on that underside of the wrist there. So very cool. So with that said, let's actually get this piece on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, as you can see on my 7.5 inch wrist, this wears, I think, quite nice. Still full sized, of course, at just under 42 millimeters, but far from oversized in my humble opinion. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, all of a sudden it's going to make the watch seem a lot larger than it actually is, and it's going to be mainly due to the perspective distortion due to the focal length on the lens. But if I keep my wrist nice and low, all of a sudden the watch seems better centered. You're seeing more of the sides of my wrist and inherently more of the sides of the bracelet. So what I'll do is keep my wrist there and then just tighten up the frame so you guys can get still a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as how this may lay on your own wrist. And you can see there, I think this is quite handsome. Now, is it going to be replacing my Speedmaster anytime soon? I don't know. I love Seiko, but I do love my Speedy. And I mean, I love generally my trilogy of Omega. They kind of cover everything. And if you know, came down to it, I could just have those 3 watches and be completely fine. Maybe, no, I wouldn't be fine, but that's more than enough. But I also now have a trilogy of Seiko watches that are elevated and full of historical significance, and I like that. And you guys can see the thickness on this case isn't too bad at all. Look at the way it hugs, guys. This thing is nice. I mean, for those of you that kick and scream and moan about the old Marine Master monoblock case that was quite a thick, I would think that, yeah, there must be plenty of people that still enjoy a good old thick Seiko. And again, not ever, like, this is as a motorsports theme, of course. Not all motorsports are created equal. Rally cars sit a little bit higher off the ground. You get more ground clearance, right? Or even just recreationally, some people just prefer an SUV and not a low-slung hypercar. And that is something that goes the same for the wristwatch space. Not everybody needs the thinnest, most svelte piece. Some people do enjoy something with a good bit of wrist presence. And I will say, for those of you that are hunting for something that feels special on the wrist, I have to say, this feels very, very special. And I can appreciate that. I mean, look at this thing. It's clean, very legible, expertly executed in terms of the transitions between brushed and polished. The brushing is definitely done to a higher level than your typical Prospex watch as well. So very, very cool here. But with that said, let's go ahead, get this off the wrist, set for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Ooh, yes, check it out. Very nice Lume, especially considering that, yeah, this is not any type of dive watch. This is a motorsports piece, and, you know, they're not really known for crazy Lume. So to have that bright Lume bright, I think, is a plus. Of course, one thing I like to work in is always going to be a bit of a low light transition, because not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming out of buildings, walking underneath the overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. And my goodness, guys, look at this piece. There's so much information to display there, but I have to say, I love how balanced it is. It, of course, is giving me some vibes of, you know, the Omega Speedmaster and the Rolex Daytona, right? Like, you're getting a lot of classical you know, iconography there. It's crossing back to some of the original, you know, mechanical chronographs, like the Zenith El Primero. But I do like that this feels very much like a Seiko watch. They didn't go for something very generic. They went for something that had specific cues that did highlight, you know, their own history, and I like that because they didn't pay homage to a different watch. Of course, in this more monochromatic colorway, in terms of the black and the white over that steel, of course, you're going to have different comparisons to other watches that are going to be within that same space, right? I'm looking at you, Omega Speedmaster, professional, right? But these don't look alike, right? They carry the same amount of registers, and they have a similar colorway, but other than that, there's not a lot they have in common. Besides, they come from brands that have been in this game for a very, very long time. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get the lights back on here. All right, let's get into some closing thoughts, guys. On the wrist, really balanced proportions, although tall, not bulbous feeling. So still nicely balanced from that perspective. Now, in terms of model variants, at the time of recording, this is the main colorway available for this particular model, although there is a blacked out SRQ057 Datsun co-branded 500-piece limited edition that currently comes the closest in terms of something that is, you know, a bit of a one-to-one with a couple of minor changes. I'll say there isn't one that's a direct. It's not like there's a white dial version of this just yet, but I'm hoping to see more variations in the near future. In terms of comparable models, guys, you really won't find another Chrono with this combo of heritage and in-house tech anywhere close to this price point. I mean, at this price point, at $2,500, I mean, you're paying that much for a three-handed Tudor, and a Tudor is just a let's call it what it is, a spade a spade. It is an affordable alternative to a Rolex, which is something that is desirable on its own merit. And Tudor's claim to fame is being a cheaper version of something that's very desirable, not necessarily something that's intrinsically desirable on its own. And you can argue with me all you want in the comments about that. That was their mission statement, and that is what they continue to do. They are not completely independent of the gravity of Rolex, and that's fine. It's great for them. But I will say Seiko has another level of prestige in my opinion, because Seiko has never been the cheap alternative to another brand. Even compared to Grand Seiko, Grand Seiko came after Seiko. Grand Seiko is a premium alternative to the Seiko brand, a luxury alternative. So it just, for me, has a bit of a cleaner history, especially when you get into all of the achievements, whether it be stuff in space, on the racetrack, at the bottom of the ocean. Seiko has been there, and they've been pioneering, and they haven't been, again, being a cost-effective variant or a cost leaning option. They've been expensive for a long time, and I think people forget about that because a handful of JDM and overproduced models that had lasted over 20 years that existed on the gray market at amazing markdowns kind of tricked a lot of people into thinking that Seiko was this cheap brand and this affordable brand. I think they're very value forward, but they've never really necessarily been about affordability when it comes to their best stuff. We've been able to take advantage of the affordability thanks to the yen rate exchange. But again, that has nothing to do with what they intended these watches to be and for them to live and the air for them to breathe. And you get a feeling of that when you get into some of the technologies that are being used here. So for me, guys, bottom line, Seiko's in-house qualities packed into a chronograph referencing a past model line with genuine horological significance within the space. And that's what this is with the Speedtimer, and that's awesome. So again, guys, huge shout out to thewatchconnection.com in Costa Mesa, California. So whether you're online or in the area, definitely check them out. Another big shout out to Noah from their team, again, for getting me the best pricing. And you should check them out and hit him up and see what type of pricing he might be able to get you if you are interested in something like this or any of their other pieces. So with that said, thanks a lot, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please hit like, and if you're already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.